Ever wished you could just make it rain, on command? Or maybe guarantee a perfectly sunny day for a big outdoor event? It sounds like something straight out of a comic book, right? But for the better part of a century, a technology called cloud seeding has promised to do exactly that. Today we're digging into the science and the wild history behind literally making it rain. And the really tricky question that comes with it. If you can control the rain, who gets to decide where it falls?
Okay, let's just dive right into the biggest question of all. Can we actually command the skies? I mean, it sounds like pure science fiction, but for decades now, we've had the ability to give the weather a little nudge.
And the promises? Oh, they are incredible. Just imagine being able to guarantee clear skies for your wedding day. Or way more importantly, ending a devastating drought that's crippling an entire region. People have claimed cloud seeding can do all this and a whole lot more. But can it really deliver on those promises? Well, to figure that out, we've got to take a quick step back and do a little refresher on how rain even happens in the first place. Before we can talk about hijacking the weather, we have to understand how the machine actually works.
The single most important word to remember here is condensation. That's it. This is the process that turns invisible water vapor, which, by the way, is all around us right now, into the liquid water that makes up clouds and eventually rain. It's the whole magic trick.
So think of it like a four-step journey for every single raindrop. First, warm, moist air rises up and starts to cool down. Then, that water vapor needs something tiny to cling onto, like a little speck of dust or pollen just floating around. As more vapor condenses, these little droplets start bumping into each other, merging, growing bigger and heavier, until finally, gravity just takes over and they fall. It's a really simple, beautiful process happening constantly above our heads.
So how in the world did we figure out how to interfere with this natural cycle? Well, the funny thing is, it wasn't part of some grand scientific plan to control the weather. Nope, like a lot of great breakthroughs, the discovery of cloud seeding was a complete and total accident.
The whole idea really started with something all of us have done. When you go outside on a really cold day and you can see your breath? That's not smoke, that's the water vapor in your warm breath instantly condensing into a tiny, visible cloud. You're literally performing the first step of making rain every single time you do it.
And that simple observation sparked a huge idea in the mind of a chemist named Dr. Vincent Schaefer. It's 1946 and he's in his lab messing around with a cold box to simulate cloud conditions. He gets frustrated that it's not cold enough, so he just tosses in a big chunk of dry ice. And the result was instantaneous. It was magic. The water vapor in the box flash froze into millions of tiny ice crystals. He had accidentally discovered a way to kickstart the whole rain-making process. And just a few months later, he literally gets in a plane, flies over a cloud, dumps out some dry ice, and creates the world's very first artificial snowstorm. Incredible.
Schaefer's discovery basically opened a Pandora's box of possibilities. It led to two main ways of doing cloud seeding, a whole range of applications, some ethically questionable uses, and ultimately a major reality check about what this technology can and can't do.
So you've basically got two options. You can go with Dr. Schaefer's method and use dry ice to supercool a cloud, forcing those ice crystals to form. Or you can take the approach of his colleague, Dr. Vonnegut, who figured out you could just give the water vapor a better surface to condense onto. He found that tiny particles of silver iodide have the perfect structure for water vapor to latch onto. So it's kind of like a tale of two approaches, brute force cooling versus a more subtle persuasion.
And this technology is used all over the world for really specific goals. China famously used it to make sure it didn't rain on their 2008 Olympics opening ceremony. Ski resorts use it all the time to guarantee they have enough snow. And in places like Bulgaria, they actually launch silver iodide rockets into storm clouds to make the hailstones smaller so they don't destroy farmers' crops.
So yeah, we've seen it used for spectacle and for protection. But this power to influence the weather, well, it's also been used as a weapon. During the Vietnam War, the U.S. military ran a top-secret program called Operation Popeye. And their whole goal was to use cloud seeding to make the monsoon season last longer, turning roads and supply lines into impassable mud pits for the enemy.
Which brings us to the big catch. And honestly, this is the single biggest limitation of cloud seeding that you have to understand. You cannot, under any circumstances, conjure rain out of a clear blue sky. You can only work with the clouds and the moisture that are already there.
Think about it this way. Cloud seeding doesn't create water, it just relocates it. It's basically a zero-sum game. If you force a cloud to dump all of its rain over one area, well, that means the cloud is empty by the time it drifts over to the next region that might have been counting on that rain. So making it rain in one place might actually be causing a drought in another. And that raises these huge ethical questions, right? Like who owns the water in the clouds?
Now, this limited but very real ability to influence local weather has also fueled some absolutely massive conspiracy theories. You've probably heard of the chemtrail theory, which claims governments are secretly engaged in large-scale weather modification, or even population control, using chemicals sprayed from planes.
However, let's be super clear here. The scientific consensus is overwhelming. These claims have been investigated again and again, and they've been repeatedly debunked. The technology is just not powerful enough for those kinds of massive global effects. It's a local tool, not some kind of planetary control system.
So, where does all this leave us? After digging into the science, the history, and busting some myths, what's the final verdict on cloud seeding? So here it is, the reality of cloud seeding on a scorecard. What it can do is influence when and where a cloud that already exists drops its rain. And that makes it a really useful tool for very specific localized situations, like making sure a ski resort has a good season. But it's not a magic wand. What it can't do is create water out of thin air. It can't end a massive long-term drought, and it is certainly not a solution to global water shortages or climate change. It's really a scalpel, not a sword.
And that leaves us with one final, pretty heavy question to think about. Today's technology is limited, we know that. But what if, someday, we did develop the power to truly control the weather on a global scale? Who would get to decide? Who would get the rain? And who would be left with a drought? It's a huge question, and one worth thinking about.